Welcome to Future World Fellows Mentoring Session. This is Module 2 of our mentoring program. The title of this module is Writing with Clarity, Structure, and Authority. Now, we said that authority in writing comes from clarity of thought, depth of understanding, evidence, and credibility. It does not come from complicated language. The purpose of this model is to equip you with the ability to communicate ideas clearly, organize arguments logically, and write with credibility and influence in public discourse. By the end of this module, you should be able to learn how to organize ideas logically and persuasively, construct strong arguments, write with clarity and precision, develop a distinctive professional voice, communicate complex issues simply, and of course, be able to produce publication-ready commentaries and analysis. Let's dive into session 1. And it says, why good ideas often fail. Why good ideas often fail. It's important for you to realize that many ideas fail not because they are wrong, but because they are poorly communicated. Why are they poorly communicated? Because the writer did not know how to, he has his ideas in his head, but he's not able to organize it properly and present it so that the readers can be able to understand and follow through. And so I'd like to begin by asking a few questions. And we say that, why do some articles influence society while others are forgotten easily? Why do some articles influence society or influence the public while others are quickly forgotten? Next question you ask is, what makes writing memorable? What makes a piece of writing memorable? That means when somebody reads a piece of article, what makes it memorable to them? They would like to remember it. The next important question for you is, what makes a reader, or what makes readers to trust a writer? You are a writer. What makes readers to trust you? A few things are important for us to understand here. Number one is that consistency is important, and balance is important. Balance is different from being objective. Objectivity is a different concept. But balance means you are able to bring whatever you're writing, bring a little to the left, bring a little to the right. If you're giving examples of what is wrong, give an example of what is right. That is what we call balance. You provide a balanced perspective over that matter, and then you allow the readers to make a conclusion. You may conclude, but you allow readers to draw conclusion. So consistency in your style of writing, consistency in your being balanced in your presentation of any issue, is one of the things that makes writers or readers to trust you. Now, there's a difference. There are 4 key issues as a writer you need to know about. We call them: first, information, opinion, analysis, and thought leadership. I repeat them. I said there's a difference between these 4 concepts: information, opinion, analysis, and thought leadership. Information is simply when a journalist go for an event, he comes back and report exactly what happened. That's an information. You're telling people, this is what happened today. There was a bomb blast. There was an accident. Just right. That is it. That is providing information. You're not analyzing. You're not trying to find out other things. So you just provide information. There's a bomb blast. What caused the bomb blast? Not yet known. You just provide information. Now, there's what we call opinion. Opinion is your own your idea about an issue, what you think about an issue. You present it to the public to reason with you. You say, this is what I think about this matter. You bring up an issue, you look at it from different angles, present as your own opinion. That's what we call opinion articles, opinion pieces. Okay, sometimes editorial pieces of newspapers or magazine can be actually an opinion. It's what the magazine thinks about a particular issue. Sometimes it's called opinion, sometimes it's called a commentary. Then the one is analysis. Analysis is when you pick up analysis and opinion, they could be together, but the difference is that in analysis, you're focusing on the matter, not just sharing your own perspective. In analysis, you bring look at the matter holistically and then say it as you saw it. You're not bringing your own ideas into it. But when you analyze, that's when you're analyzing a particular issue. Analyze it, don't bring your own ideas, don't bring your own perspective into it. Then when you come to thought leadership is a combination of both information, opinion, analysis. And then you bring your own perspective, your informed perspective, your ideas of how to make that situation better. In thought leadership, we are talking about you having looked at the issues, they analyze the matters, bring your own idea, then you now project what you think should be the better option or ideas that could change that situation. So that is thought leadership writing. In thought leadership writing, you're not just analyzing, you're profiling strong, cogent reason why something should be in a particular way. So we call it thought leadership writing. Okay, so that is it. In this session, we have talked about that many important ideas fail, not because the ideas are wrong, but because they are not properly communicated. We talk about questions that discussion questions for you. Why is it that some articles I remember, some are forgotten? Why is it that what makes a writing memorable and what makes a reader like to listen to you or read you? What makes readers want to read your articles? Let's say you're a columnist. Why should somebody always like to read your piece? It's because they can see some consistency and they can see that you all provide a balance. So that is it. So in session two, we want to take a look at the architecture of clear thinking. The architecture of clear thinking. The principle is that confused writing usually reflects confused thinking. In other words, if you can't think clearly, you cannot write clearly. If you can't think clearly, you can't write clearly. So those who think clearly are those who are able to write clearly. So before writing, you need to ask yourself, there are three important things you need to have clear in your mind. What is my argument? That thing, what's the argument you're presenting? What evidences do you have to support your argument? And why does this argument matter? Why is it important in the first place? Why is this thing you want to talk about? Why is it important? You need to ask yourself these questions in your heart before you start your writing. And that's what we call the one big rule. The one big rule idea. The one big rule idea is the central idea you want your readers to remember. The central idea or concept or issue you want to, just like when you're writing a book, there's always a central issue the book is dealing with. And also in your writing, there's a central thing you want your readers to pick. So any other thing is you gather information, you gather examples, you gather whatever is to validate that central thing you want your readers to have. So that is what is a central theme that you want your readers to understand. So that's the architecture of clear thinking. Thinking, first of all, what is my argument? What evidence supports my argument? Why does this my writing, why is it important? Session 3, we talk about building strong argument. Now we talk about argument. Let's talk about how to build your strong argument. Every strong article contains 4 elements. Every strong article contains 4 elements. First, a claim. Second, evidence. Third, interpretation. 4, implication. In claim, we say, what are you saying? What claim are you making? You make a claim over a matter, over an issue. Make a claim. Then what evidence do you have to support that claim? In other words, why should your readers believe you? It's not enough to say that there is this. What evidence do you have to substantiate your claim? Call it evidence. Why should readers believe you? Give them evidence. Supply them evidence or examples. Then interpretation. Now, what does the evidence mean? It's not just giving the evidence. Explain the evidence to them. Explain the evidence to them. When you explain the evidence, then you now then you talk about that's interpretation. Interpretation, explain the evidence to them. Now, the next important thing is implication. What is the implication of this thing to the society? Why should the society care? How does this particular thing you're writing about, how does it affect people's lives? How does it affect their well-being? How does it affect their future? How does it affect their tomorrow? That is implication. Once you're able to provide implication of what you're talking about, to the people, your readers will always like to read you, because you're writing not just to inform, you're writing to influence. And until people can identify what you are writing, they will not be able to influence them to take action or to make a decision. So the four things in the architecture of the writing, as I said, the four, rather building your argument, strong argument, the four things you must consider. One, make a claim, provide evidence, provide interpretation, and then what are the implications. Once you're able to do this, you're good to go. Section 4, structure. Structure is a skeleton of great writing. Structure is a skeleton of great writing. What is the structure of any very standard writing? There are 5. Opening, context, analysis, insight, and conclusion. Opening, context, analysis, insight, and conclusion. What do you mean by opening? Capture the attention. In your opening, you capture the attention of your readers. In context, you explain the issue. In analysis, you interpret the causes and implications, or causes and effects, or implications, consequences. That's what analysis does. Insight, provide your own original perspective on that matter. That's insight. Offer your own original perspective on that matter. When you've interpreted the cause and effect or the implications of what is it, then offer your own insight, your own original perspective. Then you conclude. Now you leave your readers with memorable thought. You conclude with a statement that will make your readers to have something that they can remember. Okay, so that is the structure. The skeleton of a writing has 5 elements, and they are your opening, the context, the analysis, the insight, and of course the conclusion. Then of course, let's move in quickly as we now. Section 5 of this thing, we're going to deal with the issue of writing introductions that demand attention. You see, every piece of writing, it is the introduction that will determine whether a reader is going to read further or just going to be bored and drop your piece. Just like when you write a book, the introduction of the book will give the reader the impetus or the desire to dive more into the content of your book. So now the same thing with any piece of writing. If your introduction is not captivating enough, doesn't raise enough curiosity, the tendency for somebody not to read further is there. So what are the 4 things? How do you create this kind of curiosity and that make readers to want to read? In attention, grab attention. We call it grabbing attention. Attention grabbing introduction. Or attention grabbing introduction. How do you go about it? First, you can start by present a surprising fact about that matter. A surprising fact. Let's say you want to write about security. You provide the fact that 20 people just died yesterday. And it is true. It's a surprising fact. Or you can provide a powerful question. Why is it that the country has refused to deal with the issue of insecurity? So you ask a powerful question. Or you provide a human story, a story of a family that have lost their loved ones on account of a particular matter. That is the human story. Or a contradiction. Why is it that the rich are living in affluence and the poor are doing this, and yet we are the same country? You provide a contradiction. Or you provide what we call a provocative statement. These are the things you can use when you're writing any piece of work that will arouse curiosity on the reader to want to read more or dive more into your piece of work. Section 6. Writing with clarity. There are common problems associated with every piece of writing. The common problems are long sentences. When you write long, winding sentences. When you use excessive jargon, or you use repetitive statements or words, or sometimes use abstract language. Let's say you have a science background and you want to write article, you want people who don't have science background to read. You need to understand that you have to write in such a way and put yourself in the other person's shoe. If you use words or concepts that are not general, you have a responsibility to explain that concept to your readers. Otherwise, you're just writing, unless you're writing to people who are on the same plane with you, you're writing to academic community like yourself, or science, people who have science background like you. But if you want to write for general public, so to speak, and you have to use plain language, simple expressions. Don't use long winding sentences, because when people read, they need to take a break. That's why I have punctuation. Punctuation, we call them the structure of writing. Punctuations, they are just like when you're driving on a road, a highway, you have all kinds of things on the highway, like road marks. Those things are they stop and check on the road, so that they tell you this is a bump, there's a bump here. So in writing also, those elements of punctuation, full stop, hyphen, comma, semicolon, those things are the agent, the instrument you use in your writing to enable your reader, as he's reading, he can take a break to breathe in and to understand. So don't use long winding sentences. It distracts attention and from what you're writing. Don't use excessive jargon. Don't use repetitive statements and abstract language that not easily understood by your reader. That means you must have an idea of who is going to read your work, and be sure that you're writing for them. You're not writing for yourself. When you're writing, you're not writing for yourself. You're writing for your readers. So you must be careful. You take the interest of your readers at heart. The principle is simple. Simple does not mean shallow. Be simple, but simplicity does not mean being shallow. Okay? Right. So session 7. In session 7, we're talking about developing authority in writing. What does authority mean? And what creates authority in writing? Authority is not titles. It's not confidence. That's not what we're talking about. Authority comes from knowledge, evidence, consistency, intellectual honesty, and fairness. This is what brings authority in your writing. You're providing knowledge. You're providing evidence to support what you're saying. You have consistency in your style of writing in terms of balance, as we talked about before. And there's intellectual honesty. You're saying what you know, not what you don't know. Saying what you know. You're not fabricating things. And of course, you are fair. You're not just writing to put somebody down or to put other people down. You are fair, providing balanced perspective to what you are writing. So